For 30 years, a chemistry teacher named David drove the same battered old Honda Civic to Washington High School. He packed himself the same plain lunch every day, and he let his coworkers assume he was living paycheck to paycheck right alongside them. The week he finally retired, someone at the school stumbled onto the truth almost by accident. David had over $1.2 million sitting quietly in his accounts the entire time. My name is Jeff Whitfield, and welcome to my money mindset. I'm not a financial advisor, and this isn't advice, but my goal here is to help you improve your mindset around money. Nobody had a clue, because David had done the one thing almost nobody in this country manages to pull off. He looked ordinary while actually being rich. Meanwhile, across town, a guy named Cooper had out-earned David every single year for 3 decades straight. Right now, he's standing on the deck of a boat he's still making payments on. He named it the Freedom. He's checking a banking app that shows about $37,000 in his entire retirement account. Same 30 years, 2 completely different outcomes. Let's start with a statistic that looks great and is actually a bit of a trick. Average net worth for an American household sits right around $1,059,000. Technically, that makes the average family a millionaire. But the median household, the one dead in the middle, with exactly as many people richer as poorer, is worth about $192,000. That massive gap between those two figures is basically what this whole video is about. Averages fall apart the moment the room gets lopsided. Picture 9 ordinary people at a restaurant bar. A billionaire walks in, and suddenly the average net worth of everyone there is astronomical, even though none of the original 9 could cover their tab. The top 1% of households hold 31% of all the wealth in the country. The bottom half holds roughly 2.5%. Strip home equity out of that median number, the value trapped in a house you still have to live in, and the actual liquid cushion for the family in the middle of America drops to about $66,000. So how does someone like David actually happen? Millionaires clearly exist. There are close to 24 million of them in this country, and the profile isn't what most people picture. The largest survey ever conducted on American millionaires found that 79% of them inherited nothing. Their most common careers in order were engineer, accountant, teacher, manager, and attorney. Teachers ranked ahead of doctors. A third never once cracked 6 figures in annual income during their entire career. 93% credited plain, boring consistency, not a big paycheck. Most came out of ordinary state schools, not anywhere prestigious. Here's the idea that trips people up. Income and wealth aren't the same thing, and mixing them up is probably the costliest mistake in personal finance. There's an old distinction between people who look wealthy on paper and people who are actually wealthy underneath the surface. The first version looks the part. Nice truck, big house, the whole show. But their net worth barely exists because every dollar coming in walks right back out. Cooper is a textbook case. His issue was never earning money, it was holding on to it. The second version tends to look unremarkable while sitting on serious wealth, because year after year they set aside a piece of whatever they made. That's David, in full. You can see the split play out in real time. Every few years Cooper landed a genuine raise. One year it was $10,500, and he did the thing that feels totally natural. He let his spending stretch to swallow it. Roughly $365 extra a month went toward a bigger truck payment, a nicer apartment, dinners that felt earned. By year's end, the raise had dissolved into his life, and he couldn't have told you where it went. That happened with every raise for 30 straight years. David's raises were smaller, but every time he did one unglamorous thing. He bumped up an automatic transfer that pulled money out before he ever saw it, then simply forgot it was happening. Now look at retirement account numbers, because this part is genuinely bleak. The average 401k balance nationally is about $168,000, until you remember that average trick from earlier. The real median balance is around $44,000, and for households approaching retirement, ages 55 to 64, the median drops to about $17,000, supposed to somehow stretch across 2 or 3 decades. The national savings rate sits around 3%. Nearly 6 in 10 Americans couldn't handle a surprise $1,000 expense from savings, and more than a quarter have no emergency fund at all. Telling that group to cut back on coffee misses the point. For a lot of these households, there was never any extra to trim. Even people who have money to invest often work against themselves. Not carelessness, just ordinary human behavior. Long-running research comparing what actual investors earn against what the market itself returns shows the typical investor falls short by more than a full percentage point annually. And in rough years, by 8 points or more. It happens because people sell in a panic when prices drop, and jump back in once prices are already climbing. Buying high and selling low repeatedly, which gets us to the real driver, compounding. Over the past 100 years, the broad U.S. stock market has averaged roughly 10% annual returns before inflation, close to 7% after. Nobody had to handpick a winning stock. Owning the entire market and staying put was enough. Start at 30 and earn that 7%, and you'd need roughly $610 a month to reach $1 million by retirement. Wait until 40, and the number climbs to around $1,300 a month. Wait until 50, and you're looking at over $3,200 a month for the same result. Every 10 years you delay roughly doubles the cost, because you're losing time. The one thing compounding actually depends on. Most of the market's total growth also happens on a surprisingly small number of days. Stay fully invested for 20 years, and $10,000 might turn into roughly $72,000. Miss just the 10 single best days across those 2 decades, and that final number gets cut by more than half. David's approach was to never sell and barely check the balance, which turned out to be the entire winning strategy. To be fair, this isn't purely about grit. 42% of full-time workers have no access to a workplace retirement plan at all. Among the lowest earners, that climbs to nearly 79% with no access. Among the highest earners, it's 18%. The most effective wealth-building tool in this country goes disproportionately to the people who need it least. Underneath it all, the ground has been shifting for decades. Wages for the typical worker have barely budged since 1980, while the typical home used to cost around 3 times a household's income and now runs past 5 times that. The extra money that used to fund people's investments has been steadily absorbed by rent, healthcare, and tuition instead. If any of this sounds familiar, that's not a personal failing. It's a system that wasn't built with you in mind. So what does that mean for you, right now? It's more encouraging than it sounds, because the real strategy is almost laughably plain. Buy a broad, low-cost index fund, set up an automatic monthly contribution, so you're never relying on nerve or motivation. Then do the single hardest thing there is. Leave it alone. That's genuinely the whole approach. Less thrilling than assembling a bookshelf from a box, but it works. And if your honest reaction is, Jeff, I don't have $600 a month sitting around, you might be right. And that's okay. This isn't about guilt. It's about knowing exactly how the system works. So the moment you do get some breathing room, a raise, a paid-off car, income on the side, you know where to send it instead of toward a fancier version of Cooper's boat. It was never about who had the bigger shovel. Cooper's got bigger every year. David just started digging sooner and never stopped. One of them spent 30 years looking successful. The other spent 30 years actually being wealthy, quietly, and those two are rarely the same person. Start today, because time is the one resource you can never get back. I'm Jeff Whitfield, and I'll catch you in the next one.